Hello, everyone. That's my cue. I'm Michelle. I'm happy to have you here and to learn about how to prevent injuring yourself at work. And you're thinking, I work at a computer. How does that happen? Oh, it can. And I experienced a lot of these problems. And you think, why am I doing this myself? So hopefully this talk will help you incorporate some new ways to move and to not stay in one position too long at your desk, and walk away with a little bit more better understanding how to stretch and how to set up your workstation. So let's get started. So a little bit about me. So before I switched to software engineering, I was always in medicine of some sort. I was a radiologic technologist before that, so I took x-rays for a while. And then I went to medical school, and I was practicing for a few years until I got really burned out and realizing working over like hundreds some hours was not enjoyable, and I wanted a better lifestyle. So now I have one, so it's great. I've been married since 2019. My husband is also a software engineer, and he's the one that kind of led me on this path. And as you can see, I'm a proud mother of two parrots, Bob and Willie. Bob is the little blue bird, and Willie's the little green bird. They're pretty funny. I wish I had more time. I could show you some funny videos of things they do. But if you would like to see those, come see me afterwards. And then I enjoy volunteering, which I'm glad CS allows me the opportunity to do that. I get to volunteer at COSI tomorrow. Being outdoors, taking nature and bird photography, baking when I can, and obviously CUBJ hockey. Given the picture of myself and my husband with the crocheted hockey beards I made for a playoff season. Didn't get to wear them this year. So, why did I choose osteopathic medicine, and why is it different from the traditional allopathic medicine route? A lot of people are confused by this, but the main difference is I'm trained in diagnosis and disease, the same as all medical physicians are trained. But with one caveat, I specialized in treating musculoskeletal disorders, or the skeletal system and the muscular system, and how those are connected to everything in our body, and how an imbalance in one region can cause downstream effects in another, and how those play a role in the overall health of a patient. One thing that I liked about it is it emphasized preventive medicine, which is why I wanted to do medicine, and it focused on health promotion, and so those were two benefits. But unfortunately, in our current medical practices, we don't get to focus on those two important things. So one of my favorite quotes is, before you heal someone, you have to ask them, are you willing to give up what's making you ill in the first place? That's basically the quote I have, right? Why am I talking about this? It's because it's expensive to treat, and not expensive in a way that's important to you as like the cost, but the time when you don't feel well because your shoulders are tight, your back is tight, you can't run around with your children or your grandchildren because you just don't have it because you just feel fatigued from work. Those are cost to your health and your lifestyle. So that's why prevention is really important, to prevent the injury and disease if we can. So basically, what I'm trying to do now is meet you at the primary prevention state, which means you don't likely have the disease, but you have practices and risks that will lead you to developing it. And so that's the bottom line. Physicians should identify these in all patients and try to help them to prevent something from occurring if they can. Because it not only improves your health overall, you have more time to spend with your family because you don't have injuries anymore, and the healthcare costs overall lowers. Before we get started, though, just a medical disclaimer. I'm not aware of anyone's medical history, so I'm not able to treat you. But this information is not intended or implied to be a substitute for a professional medical opinion, advice, or treatment. So I want you to walk away with a little bit more information and a place to start, and maybe talk to your doctor about these and get more information too. But before we get started, since we're learning about how to prevent injury, we can get up and stretch. So everyone up and stretch. This is the most frequent stretch I do at work. Many of you probably already do it and you don't realize you're doing it because you feel tension through your chest, your tension in your upper back down to the mid. And this will release all those tensions. So basically you can do it in a standing or a seated position, doesn't matter. But the idea is to kind of sit up straight and take a deep breath in and roll your shoulders back and exhale all the way down. And you should feel a stretch through your chest and through your back. Sometimes you may feel a bone pop in your back. That happens because the muscles are really tight. You can do this at work at your chair, so it's really easy to incorporate. You can set an interval to remind yourself to do this, whether that's every hour, every 2, whatever is most appropriate for you to do. This may help you overall because you now are relieving everything from the upper and lower body. And you can do that several times in a row and then at an interval, like I was saying. Okay, everyone can sit down. Thank you, guys. So what's the goals of this topic today? We're going to talk about basic workstation setup. I found this wonderful acronym called ARMS. I wish I could take credit for it. I'm just not that creative. And we're going to talk about what happens when you sit too long. What are the hazards? And the most common injuries that can occur, which are repetitive stress, and I'll elaborate about that. And then just basic key takeaways, high yield, as they say in the medical field, that you need to know that's important for today, that you walk away. So let's talk about the workstation setup. Okay, we're going to talk about the anatomy of city, and then we'll move on to the workstation. So what is good posture? Everyone's asking that. It's hard to stand because until you experience what it feels like not to sit in a contracted position, in a neutral position, that's what good posture is. You don't want to have any muscle contraction that can lead to fatigue and tension later on. So what is good and what is right? All those muscles, there's a bunch of muscles that surround your spine, and those need to be relaxed so they don't contract. So the way to do that is be able to sit where your spine's in a neutral position. You're not leaning forward, you're not leaning back, you're not overarched as well as like a lot of us can do, which I find myself doing it too. And why is office ergonomics important? Well, it just basically talks about what workers do in their work setting, how they function with their environment. 2 out of 3 individuals experience neck pain or back pain as a result of sitting at a desk all day with a computer. And then 1 of 3 people have wrist injuries just from typing and using your mouse, which causes carpal tunnel. That is pretty high for that to happen. So, but work shouldn't hurt. It should be maybe frustrating and rewarding and stressful, but it shouldn't hurt. You should walk away from your day maybe feeling mental fatigue, but not physical fatigue. So arms. So what is it? So A is for the adjustment and the alignment. Basically your chair, your monitor, your workstation where your mouse sits and your keyboard. And then R is relaxation, kind of reminding yourself to incorporate those regular scheduled breaks to relax and give your body a chance to recover from the stress sitting at the desk. And then an X is for motion. You don't want to stay in a position for too long. And then S is for standing and safety. So if you can, just remind yourself to stand during important parts of your day when it's appropriate. So when you're sitting at your desk, the foundational thing that we have is our chair besides our desk itself. And many of us don't think about this, but you wouldn't choose not a very comfortable mattress that you spend a lot of time sleeping in, so why would you choose a chair for that same reason? You spend upwards of 18 to 15 hours a day in this chair, so it's important that this foundation is the first place where you start. And many of us, and myself included, I did not know how to set up my chair. And once I figured it out, I got more comfortable and realized that it was easier to be relaxed at my workstation. Some people have asked me, what's a good seat height? Because that can vary from individual to individual based on their height. So the average is 16 to 21 inches just from the ground. So what's the goal of this chair adjustment? Basically, you want to be in where your lower leg is parallel with the floor, your hips are bent at a 90-degree. Your knees can vary depending on where you put your seat depth, but your feet should touch the ground. You shouldn't be dangling. You shouldn't push up your knees to make sure they're the right height. And then your back should be able to lean back a little bit, but not too far back or too far forward, and have the right amount of tension in those. So we're going to go over a few things to how to adjust your chair. So, adjusting the height. There should be, like in most chairs, there's a handle on the side that you just pull or push or unlock, and then you pull up and down. So what you want to do is to adjust the height of a chair on the ground where your legs are that 90-degree, and then have your feet flat. And slowly raise or lower to where your legs are flat against your seat, not pushed up or where you're laying down at an angle. When you're kind of troubleshooting this, if you notice increased pressure towards the back, like your bottom area, just raise it slightly. That means you're too low and you're pushing down into your chair. The opposite is if you feel too much pressure on the front, you want to raise that slightly because your legs in the front are not properly supported and your knees are hanging down. And then here's a video kind of showing that. And just pops up. The next one is the depth. I did not realize we had this setting on our chairs. It's basically moving the seat front or back. And this will be adjusted based on your actual leg length. You want to be able to fit a fist between your knee and the front of that chair. That's how you know that the seat depth is the right depth. You basically just pull the little knob and you push forward and push back. And we'll play the video. And some will have them on the side, some will have them underneath the chair. Basically, you just pull forward, push back. If the front of the seat is digging into your front of your legs, then you just need to move back slightly, and the opposite's true. The armrest. This is something you can move throughout the day based on how you're typing or you're moving your mouse. You want to kind of bring them in for when you're typing and then move them out for whenever you're using a mouse or some other, whatever else you're doing. They basically adjust the height where your elbows are laying flat on there and you're not pushing your shoulders up and arching them like this, but lowering them down where they feel relaxed. You're not really holding them under your own power. That's what's important. And then just moving them in and out. And you kind of see how he moves his. Just move in and out. Mine has a little knob on the side that I pop in and out. Some of them may have an adjustment on the bottom of the chair. And then this is important too, the recline and your tilt tension. This will determine how far back you're going to lean in your chair and whether or not it's going to push you and bob back and forth with the tension. So you want to be able to have your tension to where you don't feel like you're going to get catapulted out of your chair, but you also don't feel it back. Every time you lean back, you're going to get plopped back like your chair is going to go backwards. So you got to find that sweet spot where it's where you're relaxed. Like you'll know the key word is relaxed. There might be a knob on the front that you turn or one on the side. Either way, you adjust the tension to determine how much play you have in the recline. And you can see, like, she has a lot of reclining. She's got less and even less there. So for the workstation setup, I set up my workstation every day before I get started. I just want to make sure I have the items that I need for the day are within reach. That way I don't have to continue looking for them and putting myself at risk of grabbing in one location or on a regular basis. So the way I organize it is by primary zone, secondary zone, and then the tertiary zone. Your primary zone is like the area that's in front of you. That's where you're going to use for your most frequent use items throughout the day. So basically our keyboard, our mouse. If you're like me, I like to have a pen and pad to write down what I'm thinking or plotting out what I'm going to work on that day. And then I keep a water bottle there, too, to remind myself to drink water throughout the day so I don't have to continue to reach for it. The secondary zone is basically where your monitors are, things you want to reach for, but not frequently, just infrequently. Or your phone, if you have a phone at your desk, or your cell phone, or any chargers that you may have for your accessories can go there, and your dock. Tertiary zone are items that you infrequently use, like maybe once a week, maybe once a day, those kind of items. Maybe like reference books or extra notebooks that you might pull from later. Those go in your tertiary zone. And those are usually behind your monitors. So you have your primary where your laptop, your keyboard and your mouse go into your secondary where your monitors, and then behind that is your tertiary. And then you should adjust your monitor height and tilt. For me, I tilt mine down a little bit because I have the issues with fluorescent lighting reflecting off my monitor, but they do recommend a slight backward tilt, about, I think, a couple degrees backwards, 10 degrees or so. But you find whatever's best for you. You'll notice when you tilt it one way or another, you probably have less eye fatigue because of the glare. So ours for relaxation, I try to follow the 90 rule that I'm going to tell you. Basically, you're going to try to take regular breaks throughout your day. Those are important to kind of get you, one, just to take a break mentally. It's important just to walk away from a problem. You get a new perspective. And then just to, relax those muscles that have been contracting for the last few hours. So the recommendation or what I try to follow is like every 90 minutes, take a 20-minute break. Now, this is not a hard and fast rule. You can make this every 2 hours, every 3, whatever works for how you work. Some people will go a couple hours at a time and then they'll break. It just depends on what you're working on. And the 20 minutes is just a recommendation. I try to take the 20, but it's generally about 10. And then you get ready to restart your next round of work. So the next is for promotion. So your next best posture is your best posture. And that just basically means that you don't want to remain in one position all day. You want to add some variety in how you sit and where you sit. I had a problem that I would sit in one position when I was really concentrating on something difficult and started to float towards my monitor, thinking if I got closer, I could understand the problem more. And that left my arm like this for hours. And I would look and go, oh, this is why I'm in pain. I should know better. You just don't think about it because you're so drawn into the problem at hand. So just remember to keep cognizant of that you're going to do that throughout the day, but just reset, relax. I do that stretch when I know I'm doing that, pull my shoulders back, and then get back into the work that I'm doing. That way I'm not constantly being drawn to the front of my monitor. And the last thing is for us, the standing and safety. And that is, if you can, try to stand at every possible opportunity. I know that's hard, but I try to stand for my meetings or any like video calls that we have to make or any planning sessions, just to kind of give myself opportunity to have a different position, using different muscles, those types of things. If you don't have the opportunity to use a standing desk, you can convert one to one of these convertible standings that can hold monitors. And if you do want to stand, the way to stand at your desk is basically how you would sit. Now you're just incorporating your legs. You don't want to have an excessive curve in your lower back. You want that to be relaxed. You can tell the difference. If you lean back, you should feel muscle contractions here where the muscles get tight. You don't want that. Lean forward a little bit, and those should go away. That's how you know they're much more relaxed. Your shoulders should be down and not being pulled to your ears or being pushed back, but just down. So that way we relax this too. And then you should rest your forearms on your desk. So what are some of the most common injuries that you guys could have if we don't prevent them? Well, they're called repetitive stress injuries, and they're called that for a reason, because they're the result of a repetitive movement that causes injury to the area because the area isn't supposed to move that way on a regular basis. And it's generally because we're in improper form and we're tired because we sat like that for a long time. And when you're tired, that's when you're at most risk for any kind of injury. So one of the repetitive stress injuries is what we call a computer back. I was this gentleman. Every time I have a hard problem, I lean down and hunch over and go straight to the monitor. You can get that excessive curving of the upper and lower back. Your head's down and forward. Your shoulders are also hunched over. It's just really uncomfortable after a period of time. If you sit like this without intervention, you can get headaches, muscle tension through your neck and back. You can have issues with breathing because all these muscles that are in your neck actually attach to your ribs, and they don't move as well when the muscles are tight. You can have problems with how you handle stress on your lower back, which could cause back pain. And then you can just have trouble breathing. Lean over. Is that easy to breathe? No, it's not. So that's why you would have issues and problems with breathing. And then over time, if you spend a lot of time sitting like that, your body's going to adapt to that way. And then you're going to have trouble breathing all the time because your body's so malformed from sitting in this position. But what can we do? These are some stretches that you can incorporate throughout your day at your desk. That's why I picked them. They're the most common stretches you can use. They're not all inclusive. The ones I find the most helpful are like the upper trap and then just the neck roll. So what you can do is take your arm, touch the side of your head, drop this shoulder, and pull towards this shoulder. And if you want, you should feel a stretch through here and down, maybe into the back with your shoulder blade. If you want more, you just keep pulling. Now, some people ask, what's the difference between stretching the muscle and causing pain? So when you stretch that muscle, it should be uncomfortable, and it should not make you want to take your breath away or build to a higher level of intensity. It should just stay that way, that first feeling that you have. If you go to a stretch and you're starting to feel pain that's worsening, back off of that stretch a little bit. Your muscle's not ready to go that far. The more you stretch, the more the muscle will be able to move. The next thing you can do is the neck roll. So what you do is you put your chin down and you roll to the left and to the right, which I'm going opposites wrong, and left and right. And then you can do a full circle, left and right. Some of us may feel kind of popping and cracking. I get that when my neck's really tight. The reason why is you've hit a lot of tension in the back of your neck from sometimes sitting too far forward. And so what happens is these muscles will get stronger because they're contracting irregularly all day long. And these muscles behind will get stretched. And a stretched muscle is a weak muscle. And so those get weak. And so you have to stretch them a little bit to kind of reset them. All right, so the next one is what happens when you don't properly use your mouse correctly. It's called mouse shoulder. I didn't know this was a syndrome. I just know that when it happened to me, I was having pain in my right shoulder into my neck with spasms. And it's because I was standing like this or like this or like this all day, and I wasn't really catching it. The mouse is not the culprit. It's how you're using the mouse and where you're placing it. It affects the muscles in the back because they have some control over the shoulder blade, which you're pulling out now and stretching those muscles. And then when you're bringing your arm up, there's muscles here and here that contract to bring it up. So now you're contracting these muscles too. What you can do to help with that throughout the day is one is called a tri-stretch, and then the overhead reach. The tricep stretch is exactly what it is. It stretches your triceps muscles. So you take your arm, touch the back of your shoulder like this, or middle of your spine, I'm sorry, and take your opposite hand and you pull. And you just kind of lean into that stretch. And you should feel maybe through here and here. And then you do the same thing to the other arm. And the other one is the overhead reach. This stretches a really big muscle in your lower back that controls how your spine moves, rotating to the right or left, or if you're moving to the side to side. And sometimes some of us can sit like this at our desk chair, or like this, and that contracts that big muscle group. And the one stretch that I do that helps the most is bring your arm up, because that's going to grab one part of the muscle, and then you lean forward, and that gets the lower. And you should feel it in your side. And if it starts to hurt, just back off a little bit. And the other one you can do is these where you just stretch your arms. Basically, you can stretch them to the front, or you can stretch them overhead, because that's going to also stretch the front of your back and your upper body as well. And then you can stretch them down like this if you want. And another one you can do is that was the pec stretch, actually, I just showed you. So you just do that, and they pull down, and that should pull through the muscles here, and you should feel that stretch in your chest. Another thing that can happen is you can injure your elbow from improperly in your mouse, and it's called a mouse elbow, or some people know this as tennis elbow as well. It's the same mechanism of injury. It's from this constant chronic moving your arm in and out like this and not really doing properly or using proper form. How can we avoid this? So just make sure your mouse is close by, to where you're not like this, your arm is relaxed, utilizing the armrest of your chair, keeping your hand flat and cupping your mouse. You don't want to rotate to the side too much or too much. You don't want to move your wrist like away from your body or in your body. You want it to be a neutral position. And you want your keyboard positioned directly. That's why it was important to do those zones. You want it kind of in the middle of your body, set up to where you're not twerking your arms in or out, but your hands are in a nice neutral position. I use a desk pad. It was a lifesaver. I got tired of being controlled by the confines of my mouse. And so I just like bringing my mouse all over my desk. So I just move my keyboard and bring the mouse with it. Now I don't have to worry about the wrist pad or anything. And then just stretch your hands and your arms like I was showing you throughout the day. You can stretch your fingers by pulling your fingers back on both sides. I also spread them apart just to kind of stretch my palm, because there's a lot of ligaments which go through your hands. Those things all need a stretch. And what we can do is to help with this is, well, some of the problem is that, like, the muscles in the arm are just not not strong enough from being used improperly throughout the day. So you can do this thing called a wrist turn, and you can do it with a weight or with a water bottle, whichever you have at your disposal. You will basically just bring the arm like this, and then pull it in, pull it out. So bring your bottle in, drop the bottle down. And just do it slowly. And then you can turn it this way and this way. It's a simple motion. It's one of the things they do in rehab for a mouse elbow or for a tennis elbow. But it's effective because it actually strengthens the muscles that attach to the inside your arm, as well as the opposing muscles. So the next thing is the wrist stretch, where you get both sides. So you pull back, and you should feel a stretch deep in the front of your arm. And the reason why the muscles that control your hand are actually in your forearm. There's not a lot of muscle in your hands other than in your fingers. And then you pull down, and you'll maybe feel that stretch to the front of your hand, maybe through the back through here, and just hold that. And you do that to both sides. You can hold it for 15 and 30 seconds. The next one you can do is a towel twist. It kind of works just like the wrist turn, but you're just going to roll one way, roll the other, and do that several times while you're keeping your shoulders relaxed while you're doing it. And that helps loosens up your wrist, increases the mobility and flexibility from being tight all day. Another important thing that we have to worry about is our eyes. And I have a lot of eye fatigue after work, being in front of my computer all day. And I wear my glasses to help with that. But what you can do, some tips, is that my sister-in-law is an optometrist, so I asked her for advice. And she says what I recommend is the 20-20-20 rule. I thought that was pretty flashy, so it was easy to remember. So every 20 minutes, take a 20-second break and look 20 feet away. Someone asked me once, well, what if I look at a picture of a faraway object on my monitor? Will that work? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. Because your brain knows how the distance is because it's looking at the monitor, not the actual object. So it can decipher that that's not that far away. And you're still looking at the object through a screen, which is an image of the object. So try to do that every 20 minutes you can. Or when you notice your eyes or you're blinking a lot more, you're starting to get blurry, just incorporate that. I usually just look off to the side and look out the window if I can. And just kind of look, because we're lucky, I'm up pretty high, so I can see all the birds fly by at CES. So, and some more additional tips. One thing that I had problems with was I would turn my head to look at my second monitor. You don't want to do that because that's going to contract this big muscle here, and you might feel tightness through the back of your neck or in the front. And sometimes you can get tension headaches from this. It's probably from doing this all day, and I had a problem with doing that. So what I try to do is if I need to look at my second monitor or back and forth, I look with my eyes first, and then I shift over with my seat. That way I don't turn my head. I just remind myself to do that. Another thing is you can set notifications, reminders. I have a notification on my phone that reminds me to stand at regular intervals. It tells me to take breathing, meditation breaks. I'm sure there's another application that you can do that as well, just to set reminders. Some people may benefit from a footrest because they're on their height challenge, which is okay. And they don't make chairs for the right height, but way to adjust that is get the footrest, and it kind of brings your legs up a bit. That way you can sit more comfortably in a chair that wasn't quite made for you. And then the important thing to remember is the reason why you're getting injured is because the injuries are repetitive. That's the whole point. If you're doing something frequently throughout the day, grabbing for objects, and you think, well, that's not a big deal, but over time, if you continue to do that, that's what you're going to have problems with. That's what leads to the injury. So it's important to add that variety when you can. And when to seek medical advice. So when I used to see my patients and they would ask me that, I would say, well, Is this problem different from your usual? Some of us have usuals, aches and pains. If it's different from that in like the quality or the severity, then that's something that should be looked into further. That means something's happened, and now you have a different problem than you had before. If you have weakness, noticeable weakness, like grip strength issues, that's something you should get addressed. Or if you have, you can't lift something, that's important. And if it's been persistent, if it lasts more than 2 or 3 days, especially if it's worse at night, and it wakes you from sleep, that's a problem because that's in reducing your quality of life. So you should really have that checked out and see what can you do to address it. And then if it disrupts your everyday activities, if you're not able to do the things you like to do, no one wants to live like that. That's not fun. So if you can improve, if you go see someone, they might be able to help you to figure out what you can do to alleviate those symptoms and prevent them from getting worse. So the key takeaways is prevention's important. It was one of the things that I'm still passionate about, and I was happy that I get to talk to you about this today. And just start your day right by setting up your monitor and your workstation before you start work. And always be aware of your desk posture. It doesn't have to be perfect. Everyone has a different comfortable position, but just realize that you want to be in a neutral, relaxed position at your desk. You don't want your shoulders hiked up by your ears. You don't want to have an overarched back. All those are bad for you. And remember, take those regular breaks when you can. Set those notifications. You'll find a pattern that works best. Some days you work in maybe spurts of 2 or 3 hours, and other days you may not. And so you just adjust that schedule when appropriate. And then just seek medical advice if you have any of those issues, like your symptoms are worse than your usual symptoms, and they're preventing you from just having a good quality of life, so that's important. And that's all I have. Another quote that I really enjoyed is, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of a cure. And that's true. The small payoff in the beginning is worth a big reward in the end. And once you are past the point of that primary prevention and we're already into an injury or a chronic problem, those are harder to come back from because your body's already learned to adapt to that malformed movement. And so retraining your body, and not only your body, your brain, that takes some time. So it might take several years. So it's important to do those preventions. The small payoff in the front is a really big reward. And this is my contact information. That's my work email, and I can be found on LinkedIn with Michele Lanning. And then I have a QR code scanner for the LinkedIn profile. And I am a product of the Tech Chat program at CAS. So if you know anybody that would be interested in it, the Tech Chat program was wonderful. It takes people who are 0 to 1 years and with experience in software development and exposes them to all facets of technology at CAS. And then after you finish your 2 years of just sampling different technologies, different portions of CAS, you make a final decision. That's where you find your home. And I found my home in the content engine department, which is basically the data engineering department. So I get to diagnose and treat data all day, which is less stressful than it was treating patients. So it's been enjoyable. And these are my references. If you guys had any further questions or you would like any further advice, please reach out to me and ask. I don't practice clinically anymore, but I know a lot of osteopathic physicians that practice now, and there's a group in Dublin that does the one thing that I'm trained in is osteopathic manipulative medicine. You can think of it as like chiropractic medicine with physical therapy, but it's really helpful. Not enough DOs perform it. They get really specific to how your body moves, how that relates to your structure and function. They would be someone I would recommend seeing, but if you're ever interested in seeing one, just let me know. I can give you a referral to them. And that's all I have. What questions does anyone have? Okay. Let's see. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to look for the questions. Here we go. Okay. The first one I have is eye strain for small spaces. So for the 2020 rule, what if I'm in a room that is only 8 by 8 with a tree right in front of the window? How do I manage eye strain in that case? I think it's most important just to relieve your eye strain than to hold that 20/20 rule as a hard and fast rule. It's important just to take those breaks, remember to blink your eyes, because sometimes I forget to blink if I'm really concentrating. That's why my eyes get so dry. So just take that break, look away from your monitor. Don't look at your screen either, because that's not going to help with the strain issue. Just as long as you're looking at something that's not a computer screen or a monitor, and just if it's right in front of you, that's fine too. It doesn't matter as long as you're taking those breaks. And the next one says they were curious about this I've seen this, the kneeling desk chair tilts. I have not used one of those before. I think that I worry that even though it's supposed to be more ergonomically, where you're sitting on a backrest, pushing your knees forward, that can set you up for some failure if you're not prepared to sit in that position, because your muscles aren't ready to sit like that. So you have to remember that that's a different way of sitting. So you got to adjust accordingly. You may have to figure out sit like that for a couple hours a day in that position, and then go back to your traditional method. I wouldn't start right off the bat with that, just because your body's just not ready to sit like that. It's used to sitting in a chair in a traditional way. So I don't not recommend them, but if you do, I would just recommend you use them sparingly and increase your use frequency until you feel more comfortable in that position. That would be my advice. Is there any more questions? Yeah.
So you talked about if you sit a lot, you should stand. I primarily stand all day. Is it important for me to also be sitting, or am I fine just standing all day?
The question is we talk about, incorporating sitting or standing whenever we're sitting for long periods of time. If you're standing all day as your baseline, should we incorporate sitting? I think it's more important to incorporate short walks, so that way you're not seated, you're not standing in a very static position for too long. And that would give you more rest. I think that would be the only advice I would give, because sitting, it will give you relief, but not as much as actually going through a full range of motion, like going for a walk outside or something like that. Any other questions? Yeah.
So I sit on a folding chair at home. That's where I work, because I've kind of sworn off wheels on standing office chairs. Do you have an opinion on like, because when I plant my feet, the chair goes back.
Okay. So you have an issue with height because your chair is not tall enough. So you can look into these chair pads that are out on the market where they're either made of gel or foam, but they can raise the height of your seat, so that way you're not getting pushed back. And that way you're raising your actual height of your chair, but with the chair pad. I think that would help for you prevent that, feeling like you're getting pushed back in your chair because your chair is not the right height and you can't really raise the chair. You could put it on like a table, but then that would be unsafe. So I think the simplest thing would be to do a chair pad. And I would just try to determine the direct thickness of that. They may vary because it's going to be hard to find the right thickness to where you're sitting comfortable. But you could try that. That's what I would recommend. And then if you have trouble trying to find the right height, then you can get one of those little footrests where you just kind of rest your legs and you're not feeling like you're pushing forward. But I would recommend starting with a chair pad with some height and then go from there to kind of make that chair a little higher, give your legs more the ability not to be pushed back and give them that slack that you need. So that way they're resting comfortably. Anything else? Yeah.
What's the benefit of a downward gaze? I saw the picture. It's like you're sitting upright, but you're kind of looking a little bit downward at your monitor versus maybe straight on or up.
It's the use of the muscles in your neck. So if I say my monitor is here and I'm looking down, my head is much more relaxed. So try to act like you're looking at your monitor and just kind of tuck your chin and look down slightly. And then look up. Over time, you might feel more contraction or tension in your neck right here because now you're looking up. And you may actually feel more tension here. So that's just to help to reduce your neck tension so you remember to stay in a neutral position with your head. So you're not looking up too far or looking down. You just want to have that chin tuck but down slightly where you're not really feeling any tension to the front or the back. Yeah. That if you can do that, that's a good idea. I don't know if I could, but yeah, there's actually a whole category of exercises that people do at their desk. So you can do lunges, you can do squats, you can do hamstring stretches and strengthening. So yeah, I would think that's important to do throughout your day. Yeah, that would help because one component of injury is you're stretching one muscle and contracting and making it too strong, but this one back here gets really weak, or the opposite muscle gets weak because it's getting stretched all day. Strengthening it is a way to treat that. So if it's your neck, then you would do exercises to stretch the front because you're looking too far forward, and then do exercises to not only stretch but strengthen the back muscles too. So there is two components, the stretching and then the strengthening. Because if you can do one and that generally works, but if you do both, that is the most effective. So incorporating kind of strength training throughout your day, that would be good too. I don't know if I would do the squat because I don't know if I could squat and type at the same time. Anything else? Oh, thank you. Okay, there was a question about a desk recommendation. They said they've been trying to find a desk that accommodates correction of many of my desk setup physical issues that have had a problem finding one that isn't more decorative than functional. Are there places you would recommend? So yeah, actually I would. I just recently purchased a used standing desk from an office supply store here in Columbus. I wouldn't recommend a specific model, but I would recommend going to see them and getting their advice because that's what they specialize in. I can send you that link to that facility because I can't remember the exact name. It's like Mid-Ohio Office Furniture or something like that. I always have to ask my husband because I always forget the name of the place. But they have a variety of items that are new or used, and they have standing, stationary, L-shaped desk, and they even have desk chairs. They even have really deep, discounted, high-end desk chairs that have all the bells and whistles where you can adjust everything to your heart's desire. So I would recommend going there and getting their opinion because that's what I did, and they're the experts. So I will upload that information for you after the talk. Anything else? Yeah.
Just curious, talk about mouse
Yeah, I thought about trying one, though I haven't yet. But it makes sense for them to be less stressful to use because now you're sitting in a more relaxed position, which is what your arm wants to be in, as opposed to turning it and then maybe twerking it left or right. So I think that I don't have a formulated opinion. The idea makes sense. So I'll have to try that and let you know because I thought about actually purchasing one for my replace the one at work. So mine is slightly ergonomic and it does okay. It's hard to find a good mouse that fits your hand to where you're not sliding off of it. And I think those mice might actually prevent that from happening because now you're resting your hand on the desk as opposed to holding it under your own weight, which would take the tension out. So they probably would be beneficial. I just haven't used one. Yeah. Yeah, I can. I can upload this. Yeah. Your eyes, yeah. So the reason why is when you move your head, like I was saying, there's that muscle that contracts. Its main function is to rotate and then bend your head away. And so when you're contracting this muscle all day, that would actually cause you more problems. So it's hard to remember to do that. So as I said, I used to leave a post-it that said, look with your eyes, then move with your body. And that's the recommendation I gave my husband because he had the same problem. His neck was really stiff and tight because he would move his head to his monitor instead of his body to his monitor. It's a simple adjustment that you can make, but you should see some big payoffs because after he did that, he had less pain. But always look with your eyes first and then adjust your body to get in the right position before moving your head, especially if you're going to stay like that for a longer period of time. If you're just looking, glancing over, that's fine. But if it's more like 30, 40 minutes because you're working in that screen, I would recommend sliding towards that screen. Well, if there's no more questions, feel free to send me questions on LinkedIn. If you need to talk to me afterward, that's cool too. I just love teaching people about prevention. It was one of my passions. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do much of it in medicine. So at least I get to do that now, and I actually focus on it because I actually get sleep, so it's great. And I'm not as stressed as I used to be. So that's helped too. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate you coming and for all the questions. Thank you.